name's Trevor Phillips. This evening I'm simply traffic control in this panel. The way we're going to run this is that I'll say a couple of words and then I'm going to invite my associates up here to introduce themselves and spend a couple of minutes talking about their experience and their understanding of this topic. And if I can just say a word or two, Mike's going to speak a bit later, but I think the idea of Windrush, which is, I think it's probably fair to both our surprise, has become, if you like, a kind of iconic concept in this country, rather long way beyond where we thought it would be when we put together the book, which Mike will remind me he mostly wrote, and it has both our names on it, and that I thought I'd do it before he did, and the television series. I think the one thing I will say about all of that is that though this was a collection of people's experiences, in a sense, what was created, not specifically by us, but all the people who were active, did counter-creative festivals, did all sorts of other things around that anniversary in 1998, was to create a kind of myth about that generation, who they were, why and how they got here. Now, I don't use the word myth in a sort of trivializing way. Actually, I think myths are incredibly important to help us understand ourselves. But it surprised us that it became so powerful. And I think that there are probably two things to say about that. One is, I guess, a positive thing. One is a question. The first and most positive thing is that what I hope is that it gave us another idea about what immigration is about. I think today, when you hear the word immigration, it's generally speaking in a political context, and more often than not, it's a negative or contentious notion. I would like to think of this as a rather different thing. Most of us got here because our people, our families, those who brought us here, made that journey, were quite exceptional people. The truth of the matter is, if the whole story about immigration was just that there are people all over the world who want to come and get welfare benefits, or who are running away from famine or running away from war, there'd be billions of people in North America and Western Europe. I think there's another element to this story, the people who make the move, because it is a huge leap, one country to another, a great jump into the unknown. These are unusual people. They're the ones in the village that everybody thinks are a bit strange, or a bit out there, or who have to run away because they've done something that nobody else would do. And every one of their stories is in some way interesting and unusual reflection on humanity. So I think that the more we can talk about these stories, the more we begin to realize that the people who make that leap are very special people indeed. And the second thing I want to say, which I'm really glad that Marianne, Tina and Jack have in a way introduced into the conversation about this, is the extraordinary variety of who immigrants are. Now, we're marking this through in relation to an anniversary to do with indenture, but behind this are who are the people who are here, who were there. Well, I think one of the things that particularly Maria's drawn to my attention and has written about is that we need to remember that from the Caribbean, from Africa, from the subcontinent, the variety of diversity of the people who came here is much, much richer than is often talked about. And I hope we'll hear more about that tonight. So, without further ado, I'm not going to go through the biography of everybody. You can read them all, but they are all smart and fascinating people with a story to tell, both of their own and perhaps of their families. And I'm going to ask Adrian to kick off for a couple of minutes, or I should say Smoky Joe to kick off for a couple of minutes.
Okay, so Adrian Joseph, most people know me as Smoky Joe, DJ and music production, based basically in Trinidad music, Caribbean music in the main. Now my memories of heading here, first of all, just step back. My parents left Trinidad in the 50s and came and settled in Lapa Grove. And I remember really having to write them letters. I remember the address very clearly. It was, to my dad at 24 Oxford Gardens in West London, right? Never forget that address. And I went to a school called Coffee Easy Boys School in South Trinidad. Then eventually got my first year at Presentation College. Growing up with my grandmother, who was then getting on a little bit, both myself and my brother had to leave, and my grandma said, I can't look after the kids anymore, so you'll have to have them into London. So in 1961, made my way to London on the boat. Now the interesting thing of the trip on the boat in itself was an experience coming here, because my brother got really ill, and I think he was ill because of the different diets that we have. I think the boat was, that we came on was 2 weeks, and the boat was Spanish, so the menu wasn't a Caribbean menu, although all the people on the boat was Caribbean. The food didn't agree. And so I remember clearly having to go every evening because I'm thinking he's gonna die. And they had cream crackers, and this is a memory. So to make sure that he had something to eat, I'd go up and get all the cream crackers and take it down to the cabin and make sure he ate something. So that was the trip over here in itself. There were elder people, other Caribbean people, Guyanese, everybody on that same boat, and they were very helpful. There are a lot of relationships. I remember as a boy thinking there are a lot of relationships struck up on these trips with people who, when they got here, they continued the relationships. Getting into Fulham, where my parents lived in 1961, the very next day, I think it was one of the coldest winters, and I went to Henry Compton School. Now when you go to a school in Trinidad as Presentation College, which is very disciplined, and if you get below the mark, that Father Jerome is going to pull the cane out if you don't get your average for the 2 weeks. And you turn up in a school, and this is an incredible memory. You walk into the school, so we thought, okay, we're going to get into what was then a grammar school. Then they send you to the office, you did the test, and realized that they parked all the Caribbean kids in Henry Compton School, which had a really bad reputation. So the first memory of the school is teacher turns up to give maths, and the kids say, we don't want any maths today. And I'm like, really? You tell the teacher what you want? And he walked out. So if you don't want me to teach you, I'm gone. Well, school could be fun. But it was just a different culture. The other thing was that within a week it was freezing cold, and they said we have sports day, you have to go and play football. And so in the snow, you're mad. And another memory from that is taking an hour to do up my shirt after we finished because my hands were frozen and this sort of thing. But the sports teacher, I realized afterwards, he knew what he was doing because he had a lot of kids, not just myself, that came from the Caribbean who wasn't used to this. So in a way, it was a kind of a fun and games thing for him. But so we did it. I left my school 1966. I started collecting a lot of records, and what I found that you have you can either, because of the things that you meet up over here in terms of skinheads and all the racial tensions that were taking place, you found that it was no longer all the West Indian people and all the West Indian kids as Henry Compton got together to look out for each other. So we became more unified, and and there was more unity amongst us rather than everybody going their own way. I got into music, into the nightclub scene, DJing, etc. And actually, my first job was at a club called the Apollo, where because my name is Joseph Westmaas, I was known as Joe. They said, "What's your DJ name?" I said, "Don't have any." The next thing I know was Smokey Joe, which is stuck. So, I mean, that's it. Up to this point, I should let somebody else take over now because, so, up to 1961, I collected records. So from 1971, I should say, I got my first gig at the Apollo and moved on to the Q Club, which I can let you know about later. That's me.
Thank you. We're all invited round to see his vinyl, vast collection.
Yes.
We were unlucky, or of course if you were Guyanese, you would have at the back of your mind the word OBE, but I know I'm not supposed to say that, to lose two panelists, but it's our luck to have a very distinguished substitute off the bench. I'd like to ask Heidi Mirza, who everybody knows how distinguished she is. I don't need to make her head even bigger. But I'd like to ask Heidi to give us a few minutes.
Well, thank you. Yes, it is my luck to be here. I actually was delighted when I was asked and said yes straight away. And that's because it's my privilege to address fellow Indo-Caribbean people and those who have an interest in the Caribbean diaspora, because as Trevor says, where the idea of migration and migrants are in fact a dirty word, and yet the histories that we have experienced, the journeys that we have taken, that our ancestors have taken, that indeed my father took to come here from Trinidad, has made me who I am and has enabled me to contribute to the so-called motherland. And I'll tell a little bit about that story because it's full of tensions and difficulties. My father came in the Windrush generation. In fact, he came on I looked it up, December 1950 in a boat called the Columbia, which was actually a banana boat, a real banana boat. And he talks about actually being in the, I don't know what you call it, the hull? No, the hold with all these bananas and how cold it was because it had no insulation. And the camaraderie that Smokey talks about, how it was built up amongst the guys, the lads, and they all gave each other names like Smokey or Bigfoot, or my dad was called Chick, and that's a very Caribbean thing. Everybody had a nickname. And he came here. It was very interesting because I'm actually on the council of the National Archives, and I didn't know this story of my father. He passed away before he ever told me. And I was there and I thought, yes, my father must have come. Did he come on the actual Windrush boat? I said, I didn't know. And an archivist at the National Archives found the ship's manifest with his name on it and the actual address to where he was going. And it has his occupation, which was student. And I didn't know any of this history. And this is the interesting part. There is something about the journey that migrants take and the love of their children that they do not want to sully you with the hardships that they went through. They don't want you to know. And there was this sense, this sort of pride in progress, and progress was never looking back to where he came from. Hardly talked about his family to me. Hardly, I did not know any of his history. It was all about looking forward. We must get an education. We mustn't talk about racism. And this is where I was explaining to Maria that we had such tensions because, you know, I was really, you know, growing up here in Britain in the 70s, you know, surrounded by skinheads. When I came to school here from Trinidad, I was 17 years old. They used to throw peanuts at me and make honky noises. You know, the racism was overt. And I would complain and I would, you know, start up groups at school. We had, you know, all 4 Caribbean girls in my school, which was Safatis in the field. We used to gang together and, you know, as Smokey said, you know, we had a particular solidarity. It didn't matter if we were from Jamaica or Guyana or Trinidad, we would find that solidarity. And my father did not want, he was ashamed of me campaigning against racism. And he did find it very difficult, even when I became a professor of, wait for it, race equality. This was like, you know, he was proud of me. And you know what was very interesting? He was an Indo-Caribbean man from a very traditional family. His father was a minister in the Presbyterian Church. The Canadian missionaries were very active across the Caribbean, converting as they went. And he always believed that as a woman and as a girl, I should be able to drive, I should have a good education, and I could be somebody. And he didn't really think that I should necessarily get married, but he, you know, it was more about progress, but it was always progress in the white, with the white yardstick. And in fact, marrying my mother, who was Austrian, and, you know, he achieved that trophy wife, a blonde Austrian woman. He was somebody, and he never looked back. And I have struggled with that all my life. And I do find even returning home very difficult. And when I go back to Trinidad, after growing up here, I'm now, you know, being here over 50 years. When I go back as a professor in the university, I find it very hard to be accepted for my scholarship. I find it very hard to be accepted in terms of being seen from away. So there's always a tension of unbelonging. You don't quite belong here, but you don't quite belong there. So it makes us strong, it makes us unique, and it allows us, I think, to carve out new territory and take risks. So I leave you with those thoughts. Thank
I'm going to turn third to one of my near contemporaries. I won't say exact contemporaries, but near contemporaries. Diana, Roderick Westmaas, who's going to say that about his experience. I think he's not going to say anything at all about our childhood, because there's some secrets that should be kept between men, between serious men. Rod.
Trevor and I went to the same school in Guyana, and he was a prefect, and I was a little boy in short pants. But aside from that, let's just go back in time. I came to this country in December of 1959. I was 2 years and 11 months old. So I can't remember a lot about those particular days, but I'm going to reflect a little bit upon my father. But let's just tell you, my dad was one of 8 brothers. Of those 8, 5 served in the Second World War. One was killed. In fact, my father's eldest brother, who sort of toyed with staying in England, he often told a joke that he worked at the Lions tea room in Piccadilly. Piccadilly or Trafalgar? Piccadilly. Yeah, Trafalgar Square. Excuse me. And your dad worked there too. Okay, and he was a dishwasher there. This was after the war. Anyway, my uncle would tell the family, "Oh, do you remember? I want to tell you all that I would be washing dishes, and a little old lady would come up to me and say, 'Where are you from?' And he would say, 'British Guyana.' 'British Guyana? Okay. Oh, I hear that you eat mice there.' And he would say, oh yes, but we don't eat it like you do. We put sugar on it, and it's very nice. I think told it wrong. But what he thought she said was rice. You put sugar on it is what you, because he'd never eaten rice pudding before. He'd never eaten rice pudding, but yeah, we eat rice a different way. Anyway, came to England, and the thing that got my mother more than anything else was the cold. We never owned a refrigerator back in the 1961. We were living in Streatham. I do recall my mother making ice cream on the windowsill. She would just mix and put it out on the windowsill. The next morning we got ice cream because it was so cold. And yes, we did have an outdoor toilet. And I think some of you might relate to that. And it wasn't very pleasant. I remember my first present was a plastic helicopter. It didn't last too long, but it was intriguing because I'd never played with any plastic toys before I left Guyana. I didn't really bring any toys with me. The journey over, my parents didn't really speak about that. My dad came first. He came on a Booker's ship. Booker's, as you know, was a pretty much controlled Guyana with all the sugar estates that they owned and so on. And then he sort of paved the way for the rest of us to come, my sister, my mother, and myself. So we arrived in England, and the getting used to it was difficult. I think more for my mother than anything else. My dad used to say, "Zena, you'll get used to it. You'll get used to it." And year after year, they started to settle in. By the way, my father's first job, Trevor, was at John Lewis, and he was a sweeper. He swept the floor. And my brother came across a letter the other day where he was given an extra guinea for sweeping so well. So he progressed from there. He eventually joined the post office and did some better jobs, but that was his first job at John Lewis. But the United Kingdom was an alien country to my mother and my father. But we eventually got used to it. We made a lot of friends. We had a lot of parties at our home, and as you know, the West Indians stuck together, Guyanese, and we made a lot of friends from the Bajan community as well. But eventually, my mother said, "You know what? We need to sell up and get back to Guyana." So in 1970, we sold our home in Streatham and moved back to Guyana. And it was a bit of a traumatic move for us because I had gotten used to England. I had all my friends here, but we went back, and the Guyana that they left back in the early 60s, late 50s, was not the Guyana that they saw in the 70s. And after 3 years, they went their separate ways, arguing. My dad started to hit the bottle a little more, and it just didn't work out. It just didn't work out. The memories back then were not the same as the actuality back in that they found. So, but what it did for me, though, however, I got to go to QC. I got to meet guys like Trevor, and it got to give me back my Guyanese identity, which I didn't have when I was brought here as a child. So I had become very Guyanese back then, and it remained with me ever since. And in fact, my wife and I went back to Guyana about 4 years ago, spent 2 years running Coconut Estate, and we still have a lot of fond memories of Guyana and such. I've started an organization called Guyana Speaks, and I can get to that more later. But that's my little piece.
Thank you very much. And now, in a way, generation on, Liany Malkani is a writer, broadcaster. You've probably heard her on the radio before, and she's got a new book out, which I hope she will tell us a bit about, which I'm sure is available in all good bookshops. or if not,
And online.
and online. But maybe.
Yeah, okay, well, I was born here. I was the first person in our family to be born in the UK. And so I grew up on a diet of dal and rice and curry and sausage and eggs and beans, which, if I'm really honest, when I was growing up, I preferred the sausage, eggs and beans, actually. I was in one of those places where I wanted to be English. I wanted to embrace the identity that I knew, which was to be English. Whereas in our home, we were neither Indian nor Caribbean. We were a bit of a mix of the two because, we had our Indian food. We listened to John Holt when we were growing up. But I really wanted to watch Top of the Pops and engage with my friends that I knew at school. But one of the lasting kind of images I always have in my head when I was growing up was a map of Guyana. It was one of those scroll maps that hung in the kitchen or the dining room. And so it was always present in our dining room, when we were sitting down having our dal and rice and curry and greens and bhaji and all kinds of things. This map was always there, and my mum was always very vocal and would always tell us stories about what it was like for her when she was growing up in Guyana. And so I felt as a child that of course I hadn't been there, but I connected to it in some way. How you connect with your community back home based on the stories that people tell you is quite an interesting kind of experience, because on the one hand you kind of imagine it, and Guyana is this amazing, interesting, diverse place on on the coastal continent of South America, with all the wonderful stories of the Amazonian forests and peoples and Amerindians and parrots and maracas and toucans and all this kind of stuff. But of course it was also a place of great hardship too for the people that lived there. But she was always very vocal about sharing that story, those stories about my grandfather who worked on the sugar estate and her extended family. With my work, having kind of looked at and researched my story a bit more, I made amazing discoveries about her generation, my grandparents' generation. One of my grandmother's brothers was a jockey, and he used to ride. He was a horse racer, rode horses, and I've had wonderful stories about certain, new and interesting aspects of the communities that lived there. Yes, it was difficult for them, but they also had some really interesting, wild and wonderful tales to tell, which they did all of the time. So here I am, growing up in London, in the UK, in North London, in a big old freezing Victorian house where we had to go and get petrol in gallon petrol from the shop down the road, heat up the house and things like that, But I'm hearing these fantastic stories. On the map was New Amsterdam. I think back now, but there was always bauxite was always there, and the cultural halls somewhere else on this map. It's really, really interesting. And in our house, my mum in particular was a really interesting, ambitious, dynamic, beautiful, sassy person who rarely wore a sari. Did wear a sari, to a wedding or something like that, but rarely wore a sari. And so we had this kind of complete mix of cultures growing up in our homes. And I felt, she was always saying to me, knowing that I was a journalist, always saying to me, can't you research your history, find out who my relations are And it's really difficult, you know, while you're kind of traipsing around following Boris Johnson or something, to try and sit back, you know, at the end of the day and look at your history. But I regret actually not doing it then, because 5 years ago my mum passed away, and with her passed a whole range of stories and anecdotes, and you know, just the way Guyanese people can really tell a good yarn, you know, that all kind of went. So and it was only until afterwards that I went back and started looking at our history. I made the documentaries for Radio 4, Sari's Sugar and Green Bananas, which went down very well actually. The Daily Mail, even they reviewed it, and Daily Telegraph. They spelt Guyana wrong, but that's to be expected, right? I think it was British Guyana or something like that. At least they didn't say it was Ghana. I think it was a step up, which is common. And then from there, I decided that actually I wanted something more tangible. So that's when I started writing Sugar Sugar. Within the process, I drew inspiration from the memories of people like you here today, who informed my work, as well as the younger generation. My children are in the young sort of graduates now, and they were fascinated by the whole process. You know, they wanted to know more about Nanny or about our relations back home. Mum was a twin, so her sister lives in Holland because she then married someone from Suriname. So they went to Holland and we came here, and you know, we've got this kind of mix of families, also of course in Queens in New York. How could I forget Queens in New York, where most people I think have migrated to now. But it was a really important process, and if I can just give you one example of when you root yourself in history and you look back and trace back at the remarkable things that you'll find. There's a book that I was researching, or that I used when I was researching, by Clem Citran, and called Sweetening Bitter Sugar, and he interviewed Lord Jock Campbell, who owned a plantation in Berbice, which is where our family are from, and in fact owned the Albion plantation, which is where our family are from. So I started to look more and more into this, and there's a wonderful passage in there which talks about the manager of the estate and how wicked this manager of the estate was. You know, he had no regard for the Indian workers who were working there at the time. He was very dismissive, quite a cruel man, and his name was James B. So this registers in my mind. And while I'm putting this research together for the book and also for the documentary, I then go and speak to my uncle, my mum's cousin. So we're chatting, and he's bringing his shoeboxes down with all of his photographs and birth certificates and everything. And I have a look at the birth certificates, and on his birth certificate is that man's name. And it was such a moment for me, you know, I felt quite weary by the end of it, because it meant that what I was reading in a book somewhere, somebody else's account, actually resonated with my life. It was there in black and white, right there in front of me. And it was one of those moments where you think, wow, I do actually exist, I'm here, and my ancestry will, is located in a place and will move forward. And so, you'll find snippets of what I've told you now, in the work that I do as I continue. But yeah, I think going back and reliving your memories, but passing them on is a really important thing, which is what I'm trying to do now with Sugar Sugar in particular, with the documentaries as well, and the things that I write. So I think I've said enough. I'm going to hand you back to Trevor.
Okay, well, our final speaker from the panel, I don't know what to say about him, I've known him a long time. Yeah, all my life. But I think it's probably... You see, this is what you get when you bring the family into things, right? You can't have You can't say anything without some criticism. Let's bring you back that Christmas. Anyway, let's not go back there. But let me introduce you to Dr. Mike Phillips. Brother, Mike.
Interesting. I'm sorry I wasn't here right at the beginning, but typical Guyanese, I thought it was 7 o'clock. But sitting here, listening to people talk about various experiences, the Q Club and Lions and various things of that sort, took me right back to my own childhood, growing up in Wood Green. When I arrived, London seemed to me a very strange place. It was a strange place. And the thing about sitting right here, I'm sitting opposite to Eric Huntley, who's a relative of mine by marriage, and who I first met in those days. I was a small boy, and I remember him coming into my room on a visit and looking at the bookshelves, and I can't remember what I was reading. I was telling him what I was reading, very enthusiastic, and he said, "Aha, the Russians! Don't forget the Russians, boy." And it was something that actually stayed with me, because I thought, I spent years reading all sorts of things, but that, what he said, to me, said something about the culture that we came from. What was important was the sense that the world, the entire world, belonged to us as Guyanese. That was a kind of inspiration about what we were. Not one thing, but a number of different things. So the distinctions between us, the different groups of Guyanese, or the different groups of Caribbean people, as I knew them at that time, the distinctions were irrelevant, because what we were was part of a huge mixture of cultures. In a way, what we need to do now, I think, thinking about the business of our own history and how we talk about it, how we tell it, because of course we need to tell it, otherwise it's forgotten. But what we need to do is to decide how to listen. How to listen to these experiences and how we can understand their meanings. I'll stop there.
Oh,
I just wanted to say, we all went to the same school. And that's an interesting tradition, because all of us brothers went to the same school. It's interesting encountering again and again and again boys, I say boys, I'm talking with 70-year-old men, who went to the same schools as well, and I think of that as part of my Guyanese experience, but it's not. It's simply having been to the same school, and that can happen to any family.
Except it was a very special school, not quite in the way they mean special school these days. But I think that's. I just listened to everybody here, and I'm struck by a couple of points. One, to pick up a part of what I think they said. You said the interesting thing about everybody who is on this platform, and everybody who's interested in this topic, is that the landscape, I think, from which we approach this is quite different from that of our neighbours. I mean, look, I was born here, though I came and went. I've all been here for a long time. But I think one of the key things about migrant families is that the first frame of reference is global. It's global. At the back of your mind, there's a whole other world beyond these shores. And even if it's just from the point of view, the point you made, really I think really telling me that you remembered, I must include Queens, would be a commonplace for a Caribbean person or descendant of a Caribbean person, because we've all got relatives here and there, and I think the same would be true for people from the subcontinent. The same would be true for people who come what I call the direct route from West Africa, as opposed to the route we follow, which I sometimes call the cruise route. We all have a sort of frame of the world which is global, and which actually is probably increasingly the right frame of mind in a world where globalization is now probably the central dilemma of mankind. The second thing that I hear, which nobody's quite said in this way, but I think is very interesting, is, I think you referred to it, Heidi, the question of what we hear from our parents or what we tell our children, and the secrets we keep from them. I do not know a single Caribbean immigrant family where when you sit down and you talk long enough, somebody isn't going to tell you about something that nobody in the family would talk about because it happened back home, or it happened between home and here, or somebody did something with somebody else's sister that wasn't, all that stuff.
Or it wasn't true.
Or it was. It's always true. But the point, I'm very interested in the way that somebody used the phrase reinventing, the way we reinvent ourselves, that actually the journey allows you to become a different person. That's in a way why people take that journey, but as part of becoming a different person, you leave aside, you forget things, and you take things out of the record. And I think that's quite an interesting and tricky thing. There are things we were discussing before, some of the language that one might use, and I'm going to be the only one who's allowed to say this. So the background that I and Mike would come from in Guyana, the word kuli would be very commonly used. Now nobody wants to use that word now, but actually we're kind of telling ourselves that we never did. And I think this issue of what we leave behind and what we keep is quite a tricky one that's the kind of exercise that Mirza and colleagues are opening up, provides us with some really hard issues to debate. And the last thing, which again relates to that, is Mike raised, is how do we keep this story alive, and how do we get to understand it better? Because one of the real big problems is that most of us cannot find out the truth about what happened to us 2 generations back. We've got some idea about the last generation, but the 2 generations back, no record. We don't know whether, as Mike says, whether what somebody's telling us is true or not. How do we understand that? Because if we can't understand that, it's hard to understand ourselves.